trains, because ScotRail has been in the headlines for various reasons over the past few months. The ending of the peak rail fare scheme, of the off-peak rail fare scheme, plus a reduced timetable. Today it returns to normal service, but we thought we'd look around the world and see how they're running their rail services and how it compares. Jamie Smith-Maillet is with us, based in France. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Kaye.
Good morning. And also political correspondent for The Scotsman, Rachel Amery. Morning, Rachel.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, let's start in France and indeed in Europe, Jamie, if you don't mind. What is the rail service like there?
Yeah, well, I think France has always had, from a UK perspective anyway, always been kind of cited as a good player with what's available in terms of trains. And I suppose the one thing that we'll think of often here in France, also in Germany, is the high-speed rail network. And France really started investing in high-speed rail, I'd say, from the 80s onwards. But it's something that they've continually invested in, with new links opening up just in the last few years on the west coast down to Bordeaux. So it means you can get, from Paris right down to the Mediterranean coast, really in a matter of hours. 3 hours down to Marseille or Montpellier. And the sort of the latest news for France as well is pairing up with the wider European network. So with Germany, there's been a project that's been ongoing for a number of years now to improve the link between the French capital and the German capital, which should be opening up in December. So you can get from Paris to Berlin in 7 hours in a seamless, a train without any connections anywhere. So I think it's the network on high-speed rail. What's also coming back on the continent in the last few years, triggered by a number of things, notably as well a push for more eco-friendly travel, is the night train is having a bit of a comeback in France, also through Germany. Austria has invested in it a lot. So I travelled from Paris to Vienna a couple of years ago by night train, and waking up in Vienna in the snow for breakfast down there after having had my evening meal in Paris the night before. So definitely a sort of romantic way across for travel that's coming back in across France and across Europe as well.
Now, of course, we have the night sleeper, which goes from various points in Scotland down to London, which is a pretty good service. It is expensive. I mean, how much did that cost you to do your overnight?
Yeah, well, the overnight there, that was €79, and that was getting it quite early on. So that's
was it a seat or a bed?
It was a bed. It was in a sleeper. It was in a sleeper option. Shared sleeper compartment. So, if you want to privatise a compartment area, you pay a bit more. But they're pretty well subsidised. And it's the case in France as well. They've gone less so for the sort of boutique-style hotel on wheels thing, which perhaps is in some ways the case that the UK's pushed for. So it's still, affordability is a key criteria, but, you do have to book your tickets in advance.
Right. And so just roughly, Jamie, and I know there'll be various fares available, but roughly, you mentioned Paris to Berlin or Paris to Marseille. What kind of price would people be spending for that?
Yeah, well, if a Paris down to Marseille, if you book in advance, you can easily get under the €100 mark. You could be around the 50. You can get some deal fares around €30. The thing is, a lot of people travel with discount passes. So there's a thing called the weekend card, which allows you to get a third off rail fares if you travel at the weekend or you have a weekend included in your outward and return journey. So a lot of people will get these sort of discount cards, cost about €50 for the year, and it gets you a third off tickets, which is a really interesting offer for people travelling in France.
Rachel, I think a lot of people who are travelling by train in Scotland and indeed further afield, south of the border, will be thinking, wow, they seem to be miles ahead. But Jamie also mentioned the word subsidy there. To what extent is our rail network subsidised?
Well, the rail network in Scotland has been nationalised anyway by the Scottish Government for the past couple of years. But yes, when you hear Jamie's experience of the trains in Europe there, it does paint a very, very different picture from what we experience here in Scotland. Last month, for example, I was in Portugal on holiday. I took the train between Porto and Lisbon, and now that is about 200 miles, but it only cost about £23. It was very cheap for what it was. It was clean. Everybody had a seat. And if you compare that to what we see on ScotRail trains today, it is quite a different picture that we see, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it is, and loads of people getting in touch today with their epic train journeys, and not mentioning price necessarily, but I think we know enough to know that certainly with Europe we compare pretty poorly. So, I mean, why? I mean, these things obviously don't happen overnight. This has been a long time coming. How do we find ourselves in this situation?
Yeah, it seems to be there's a difficulty with just trying to get things improved on the trains. As you were saying earlier, the dual timetable has now come back after the strikes were sorted out. So that will hopefully improve the reliability of services in Scotland, potentially throughout the day. But there's a big problem in the trains in Scotland, overcrowding, particularly at peak times. I mean, thinking of my train to work in the morning, it is standing room only by the time you're getting close to Edinburgh. And that should be an issue that's easily sorted. There are other issues which could be easily sorted as well, such as train cleanliness, Wi-Fi provision, for example, as well. So it seems like there are easy enough steps to be taken, but they're very difficult steps to take.
And why is it so?
Of all of this,
Sorry, Rich. I'm just looking at the clock. But why is it so expensive? And it's not just in Scotland; it's the rest of the UK as well. Absolutely. Why is it so expensive here in Britain compared to Europe?
Well, obviously the trains have been nationalised in Scotland, but one of the issues Scotland is seeing is the Scottish Government's budget is being cut really dramatically. Over the summer, we have seen the Finance Secretary, Shona Robertson, basically pulling the stop on anything but essential government spending. And the transport budget is one of the things that's having to be looked at, as is all the budgets in Scotland. So that's one of the big problems in Scotland just now, is there's just not enough money to go around at the moment. And so when it comes to prioritising things, other things have to get the money first.
Jamie, I mean, in France and in other parts of Europe, are people basically really happy with the rail service, or are there still grumbles there?
No, there's definitely still grumbles. Yeah, definitely in France as well. I think, people will complain about the SNCF, which is the national operator, and often, periods of delays and also cost as well. As mentioning there, sometimes prices go up a lot. But coming back to that, there is a lot of public investment still to this day, more or less, in the railways. It's a fully publicly owned company. The regions as well in France have to invest quite a lot. So the local authorities invest in more regional travel, and there's sort of some offers there to incentivise people. But, some of the issues as well has been opened up to competition in France, meaning that railways, there are now other operators on the tracks. So yet see what that will do in the future to the provision of railways. And yeah, there are still quite a lot of grumbles, and around, as does happen in France from time to time, the odd strike on the railways. So that is part of there are often grumbles that we hear later on in the year as we approach sort of Christmas period, etc., with trains being overpacked, etc.
Well, we can only hope that things will start to improve here. Thank you very much, Jamie. Thanks also to Rachel Amery.